Shane Vance had one rule when working events like this: keep his head down, keep everybody safe, and don't get distracted by the glitter. But tonight, standing stiff in his tight black security shirt at the entrance of the ballroom, he was already failing. The VIP fashion gala inside the Mercer Grand was a far cry from his normal night shifts at the mall. This place was dripping with crystal chandeliers, velvet ropes, and people who probably spent more on their shoes than he made in a month. He adjusted his earpiece and scanned the crowd again, not for threats, but because he couldn't believe he was even allowed in this world. A hand tugged at his sleeve. "Dad," she dropped her bracelet. His 8-year-old daughter, Hazel, stood beside him in her oversized coat, holding a glittery gold bracelet in her small hand. She wasn't supposed to be here. But when the sitter canceled last minute and he couldn't afford to miss this gig, he had no choice but to bring her and keep her backstage in the staff lounge. She was supposed to stay put. Shane gently took the bracelet and knelt to her level. "Hazel, what did it tell you? You can't wander out here." "I was just coming to tell you someone's crying in the bathroom," she whispered, eyes wide. "A lady in a silver dress." He glanced toward the corridor she pointed at. "All right, go back to the lounge. I'll check it out." She nodded and ran off, her little boots squeaking on the marble floor. Shane pocketed the bracelet and headed toward the bathroom, his boots silent on the plush carpet. When he pushed open the heavy door, he expected to find someone drunk or upset over a broken heel. Instead, he found her. She was leaning against the marble sink, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. Her silver gown shimmered even under the dim bathroom lights, hugging her curves like it was made just for her. But it wasn't just the beauty that knocked the breath out of him, it was the way she looked so real, sad, like she didn't belong here either. "I'm sorry," Shane said quietly. "I didn't mean to barge in, just wanted to make sure everything was all right." She looked up startled, then blinked. "Your security." He nodded and stepped inside. "My daughter said someone was upset. Look, I know this is a weird place to be having a bad night, but if you need help." She gave a soft laugh, wiping under her eyes. "I'm fine, just needed a minute away from the sharks." He noticed the bracelet in his pocket and held it out. "You dropped this." She took it, their fingers brushing. "Thank you, and thank your daughter for me." He hesitated, then offered a small smile. "I'm Shane Vance." "Waverly Roads," she said, straightening up and smoothing her dress like she hadn't just been crying. "Nice to meet you, Shane." The name hit him like a jolt. Rhodes, as in Rhodes Tech, Rhodes Media, Rhodes everything. He'd seen her face before on a magazine cover once while waiting in line at the grocery store, but she looked different in person. Softer, tired. "I didn't expect to meet a billionaire in the ladies' room," he said, trying to make light of it. Her brow lifted. "I didn't expect to cry in it." They both laughed, and something about it felt easy. She didn't seem like the type to brush him off or look down her nose. She seemed lonely. Before he could say more, his earpiece crackled. "Security to the eastern exit. We've got a disturbance." Shane sighed. "Duty calls." Waverly nodded. "Maybe I'll see you around, Shane." He left without replying, heart pounding harder than it should have. The next evening, Shane was back at the Mercer Grand for the second night of the event, this time on floor patrol. Hazel was with a coworker's wife for the night. He hated leaving her, but he needed the money. The same money that barely covered rent, school supplies, and the hot water that sometimes didn't even work. He rounded the corner near the bar when he saw her again. Waverly was standing alone, sipping from a champagne flute, her silver dress replaced by a dark green number that shimmered like emeralds. She met his eyes before he could look away. She walked right up to him. "Didn't expect to see you again," she said. "Didn't expect you'd remember me," Shane replied. Waverly tilted her head. "You're kind of hard to forget." He swallowed. You all right tonight? Better now, she said, voice softer. They stood like that for a moment, two people from different galaxies, orbiting too close. You always this charming to the staff? He asked. She smiled, only when they saved me from crying in public. He laughed, surprised by how much he liked talking to her. You don't belong here either, do you? She shook her head. No, but I built this world, so now I have to live in it. He didn't know what to say to that, so he just nodded. Are you off soon? She asked suddenly. Why? I want to buy you dinner. He blinked. You want to buy me dinner? Yes. I'm security. And I'm a billionaire, she said. We've both got labels, doesn't mean we can't eat. He glanced around. I get off at 10, but I'm not dressed for some 5-star place. I wasn't planning on taking you to one. I want real food, something greasy. Fries. He grinned. I know a place. By 11, they were sitting in a booth at a 24-hour diner, coffee mugs steaming between them. She'd changed into jeans and a hoodie, still looked like a goddess. He told her about Hazel, about working nights, about the divorce 3 years ago that left him with nothing but a beat-up car and a custody agreement that barely gave him weekends. Waverly listened without interrupting. When he finished, she reached across the table and touched his hand. You're a good dad. He looked down at their hands. You're not what I expected. She smiled. Neither are you. He walked her to her car, a sleek black car with a driver who looked like he belonged in a spy movie. She turned to him before getting in. I'm going to be at the gala again tomorrow, she said. If you're working, maybe we can talk again. Shane nodded. I'd like that. She leaned up and kissed his cheek. Good night, Shane. As the car pulled away, Shane stood there under the streetlight, heart beating way too fast, wondering how the hell a billionaire just made him feel like the richest man alive. By the time Shane stepped into the hotel's staff lounge the next evening, he felt like he'd walked through a storm-wet sidewalks, traffic delays, and a last-minute scramble to drop Hazel off at his neighbor's daughter, who was thankfully free after her shift at the bakery. He hadn't planned to work the final night of the gala, but when the coordinator offered double pay for short notice coverage, he couldn't say no. Rent was due in 5 days. He tightened the strap on his radio as he entered the ballroom, scanning faces, keeping his focus sharp. The atmosphere buzzed differently tonight, more press, more flashbulbs, more of everything. There were whispers of a surprise announcement, though no one seemed to know what it was. Shane didn't care. He was here to do his job. But when he saw Waverly standing near the stage, speaking with 2 men in sharp tuxedos, his heart beat against his ribs like it was trying to escape. She had her hair pinned higher tonight, and her dress was a deep navy, structured and striking. She looked like the kind of woman who made decisions that changed the stock market before breakfast. She noticed him almost instantly. "Excuse me," she said to the 2 men beside her, walking away before either could protest. Shane stood still until she reached him. "I wasn't sure you'd be working again," she said, her eyes flickering with something unreadable. "Neither did I," he replied, "but here I am." "Are you always this composed, or do you just practice in front of mirrors?" she asked, tilting her head. "I don't own a mirror big enough." She laughed lightly, then leaned in a little. "I have a question." "Fire away." "Do you ever take off the armor?" He frowned slightly. "What do you mean?" "You carry yourself like someone who expects the world to fall apart any second," she said quietly. "I'm just wondering if you ever let anyone see what's underneath." He didn't answer right away. Then, "I don't have a lot of reasons to." "You might now." Before he could respond, a voice boomed through the speakers, calling everyone's attention to the front of the ballroom. A man in a velvet suit took the stage, launching into the night's closing remarks. Waverly leaned closer. Walk with me. Shane hesitated, scanning the room. I'm still on duty. I won't take you far. He followed her out through the glass doors and onto the terrace, where the city lights stretched for miles. The hum of traffic below was faint, like background music to a different life. She stepped up to the railing, resting her palms against the cold metal. Hate these events. You don't seem like someone who gets nervous in a crowd. I don't get nervous, she said. I get exhausted. He watched her for a moment. Then why do them? Because it's expected. Because my name gets mentioned in every press release. Because I inherited a company built by a man who believed silence was weakness. Shane leaned against the railing beside her. Your father. She nodded. He built Rhodes Global from a garage in Queens, made his first million at 24. By the time I was born, we had 5 homes and a staff of 16. Sounds like a lot to live up to. It is, but that's not the part that keeps me up. It's the investors, the board members, the vultures waiting to pounce if I make the wrong move, if I show too much softness. He studied her face, the tension in her jaw, the way her fingers gripped the railing like she was holding herself back from falling. You don't have to prove anything to me, he said softly. She turned toward him. That's exactly why I wanted to talk to you again. They stood in silence for a moment. Then she reached into her clutch and handed him a small, folded piece of paper. What's this? My personal number. Don't give it to anyone, and don't wait too long. He slipped it into his pocket. I won't. A voice crackled through his earpiece, requesting backup at the guest entrance. He straightened. I have to go. She nodded. Thanks for not treating me like a headline. He turned to leave, then paused. Waverly. Yes. I don't know what this is, but it feels real. It is. Later that night, long after the gala had ended and the ballroom had emptied, Shane sat in his car outside his apartment building, the city quiet around him. He pulled out the piece of paper again, running his thumb over her handwriting. He didn't call, not yet, but he didn't throw it away either. Inside, Hazel was already asleep on the couch, wrapped in her favorite blanket, cartoons still playing quietly on the screen. He lifted her gently, carried her to bed, and tucked her in. As he turned off the light, he whispered, Things might be changing, kiddo. And for once, it didn't feel like a lie. The next morning, Shane stood in line at the corner laundromat, a basket of wrinkled uniforms balanced on his hip, and Hazel tugging on his sleeve with a crumpled flyer in her hand. Can we go, Dad? She asked, holding it up. They're doing a petting zoo at the community center today. There's even a llama. He squinted at the paper, then glanced at the clock above the dryers. I've got 3 loads to finish before my shift. Please, she widened her eyes in that way she knew worked too often. Just for an hour. He hesitated, the dryer beeped behind him. All right, llama it is. By the time they arrived, the center's lawn was swarming with kids and folding tables. Hazel was off like a shot, leaving Shane to lean by the fence, coffee in hand, watching her laugh as a goat tried to eat her scarf. He didn't notice the black SUV pulling up until the driver stepped out and opened the door. Waverly climbed out wearing jeans, boots, and sunglasses that probably cost more than his rent. She looked out of place, yet completely unfazed by it. You followed me, Shane asked, stunned. Not exactly. I called the number on the flyer, asked if a guy with a daughter named Hazel had signed in. She took off her sunglasses, and here you are. He raised an eyebrow. You tracked me down through a petting zoo event coordinator. I'm resourceful. Hazel spotted her and ran over, tugging his hand. That's the bracelet lady. Waverly crouched down, smiling. You must be Hazel. You helped me a lot that night. Hazel nodded proudly. You looked really sad. I was, Waverly said, but I'm not now. Shane watched them, something in his chest tightening. He wasn't used to people showing up for him, let alone like this. You hungry? Waverly asked, standing up. There's a food truck over there with grilled cheese and tomato soup. I'm buying. Hazel's eyes lit up. Dad, can we? All right, he said slowly, but I'm paying for mine. Waverly leaned in. Then I'm paying for hers and yours next time. They sat on a patch of grass, Waverly somehow managing to look comfortable despite the uneven ground. Hazel chatted non-stop, telling her about school, her favorite cartoon, and the time she tried to make slime in Shane's shoes by accident. Waverly listened like it was the most important story she'd ever heard. After Hazel ran off to chase a rabbit, Shane turned to her. You didn't have to come here, he said. I wanted to. Why? Waverly sipped from her paper cup. Because I've been thinking about you, and not in the polite, passing way, in the keeps-me-up-at-night way. He didn't respond right away. The breeze picked up, rustling the flyers on a nearby table. I don't belong in your world, he finally said. You know that. She looked at him. Do you think I belong in mine? He opened his mouth, then closed it again. I've spent years surrounded by people who say things because they want something. You don't, you just see me. I see a woman who could have anything, he said, and I'm not sure why she's sitting on damp grass eating grilled cheese with a guy who rents a one-bedroom. Maybe because I've had everything, and it never felt like this. They sat in silence again, but it wasn't heavy. It just was. Hazel ran back, breathless. Dad, they're letting people ride the pony. Can I go? Shane nodded. Stay where I can see you. As she ran off, Waverly touched his arm. Let me do something, she said. Don't say no right away. What? I want to sponsor her school program, or her art class, or whatever she's into. He shook his head. I can't have you. I'm not doing it for you. I'm doing it because she matters. He stared at her, trying to find the angle, the catch, but there wasn't one. I'll think about it. She nodded, not pushing. Later, as they walked to his car, Hazel holding a balloon shaped like a cow, Waverly paused by the sidewalk. I have to fly to London tomorrow. Investors. For how long? 5 days, but I want to see you when I get back. Are you sure? I'm not the least bit unsure. He watched her step into the SUV, the driver closing the door behind her. As it pulled away, Hazel looked up at him. Are you going to marry her? Shane laughed, startled. What? No, that's not how things work, kid. She likes you, Hazel said simply, and you look happy when you talk to her. He buckled her into the car seat and closed the door, heart still racing. Maybe things didn't work like that. But maybe for once they could. Waverly returned from London 5 days later, stepping off her private jet with the weight of jet lag pressing against her temples and the scent of recycled cabin air still clinging to her coat. Her assistant buzzed in her ear about board meetings, a missed interview, and the next quarterly forecast. She tuned it out. She'd handled contracts, smoothed egos, and convinced 3 European investors to double their shares in Rhodes Global. But none of it felt like anything compared to what she was about to do. 3 hours later, she stood in front of Shane's apartment building in Queens, holding a paper bag full of pastries from a bakery down the street that Hazel had once mentioned in passing. It was early even for her, but she didn't want to waste another second. The door opened before she could knock. Shane stood in the doorway, wearing a threadbare t-shirt and jeans, barefoot, looking like he hadn't slept much. His hair was tousled, and his eyes held a hesitation that hadn't been there before. I didn't expect you this soon, he said. I didn't want to wait, she replied. He stepped aside to let her in. The apartment smelled like cinnamon and laundry detergent. A stack of school books sat on the dining table. Hazel's backpack was open on the couch, a glittery notebook peeking out. She followed him into the kitchen, where he poured 2 mugs of coffee without asking. "I wanted to call," he said, "but I wasn't sure if you'd be in the same headspace when you got back." "I'm in the exact same headspace," she said, "just slightly more caffeinated." He handed her a mug. Hazel's at school. She got Student of the Month. A smile tugged at her lips. "That doesn't surprise me." He leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "I've been thinking." She waited. "You come from jet engines and investment portfolios. Come from broken leases and expired cereal. I'm not looking to be a charity case and can't give you yacht weekends or Tuscany." She set her mug down. "You think I care about that?" "I think you're used to things that run on power and polish," he said quietly. "And I'm barely holding things together with duct tape and hope." "I'm not here because I need polish," she said. "I'm here because when I'm around you, I don't have to perform. I don't have to calculate. You look at me like I'm enough. Not a headline, not a merger, just me." He looked away, jaw tight. She walked up to him. "I brought you something." He blinked. "What?" She handed him a manila envelope from her coat pocket. He opened it slowly. Inside was an official sponsorship form for Hazel's art program, fully paid for the next 3 years. And behind that, a scholarship certificate in Hazel's name for a private school with a strong arts curriculum, just 10 minutes from their apartment, with transportation included. "I told you I'd think about it," he said, voice low. "You did, and I waited," she said. "But now I'm asking. Let me be part of her world, not out of obligation, out of love." He didn't answer. He just looked at the files in his hand like they were too heavy to carry. Then he said, "Come with me." He led her out of the apartment, down the stairs, and across the street to the park where Hazel often played. The sun had just started to rise, casting a golden hue over the swing sets and empty benches. "This is where she learned to ride a bike," he said. "Couldn't afford training wheels, so we did it the old-fashioned way." She reached for his hand. He let her. Every time she fell, she got back up. Scraped knees, bruised elbows didn't matter. She just kept going. "She gets that from you," Waverly said. He turned to her, eyes searching hers. "I don't know how to do this. I've never had something this good. Something that scared me because it could actually work." "I'm scared too," she admitted, "but I'd rather risk falling than not ride at all." He let out a breath, then pulled her into him, arms wrapping around her like he'd been holding back for far too long. She rested her head against his chest, letting the warmth of him settle into her skin. "I want you here," he whispered. "Not just on weekends, not just sometimes, all the time." She looked up at him. "Then I'm staying." Later that week, Waverly invited Shane and Hazel to an evening gala, but this time, not as security. She sent a black car for them both, along with a custom dress for Hazel and a tailored suit for Shane that she had commissioned without asking for sizes because she already knew them. The event was hosted at an art gallery overlooking the river. As the 3 of them stepped onto the red carpet, flashbulbs exploded. But this time, Waverly didn't pose alone. She held Hazel's hand in one and Shane's in the other. Reporters whispered. Headlines would follow, but none of it mattered. Inside, beneath a chandelier of blown glass and 100 murmured conversations, Waverly turned to Shane. "I used to think love was a trade, something you earned or negotiated. But it's not, it's this." He kissed her then, not caring who saw, not caring about the cameras or the crowd. Because in that moment, nothing else existed. Not the past, not the difference in their bank accounts, not the fear. Just her. Just them. and when Hazel ran up seconds later, pulling at their hands and pointing to a painting that looked like it had been made of melted crayons and magic, Waverly laughed and said, "Let's go see what our future looks like." And Shane, without hesitation, followed her into it. Waverly's office overlooked the skyline from the 52nd floor, but the view no longer made her feel powerful. Not in the way it used to. Today, it just looked like glass and distance. She turned from the window as Shane stepped inside, his tie slightly askew, a bouquet of wildflowers in one hand and a stack of papers in the other. Hazel picked these from the corner stand, said the roses looked too stuck up, he said, setting them on her desk. "She's not wrong," Waverly replied, brushing her fingers over the petals. "These are perfect." He leaned on the edge of the desk. "You sure this is what you want to do?" "I've never been more certain of anything," she said, sliding the papers toward him. "I signed everything this morning. The boards approved the restructure. I'm stepping down as CEO." His eyebrows lifted. "You're serious?" "I'm not walking away. I'll still be on the board, but I'm not going to live in this building anymore. I want a life that doesn't require heels at midnight and 40-page contracts over dinner." He ran a hand across his jaw. "You're giving up a lot." "I'm choosing something else, something better." Her gaze softened. "I've spent years building an empire I never actually lived in. I want to build something real with you." He nodded slowly, letting it sink in. "So what happens next?" "Well, first," she said, reaching behind her and pulling out an envelope, "we deliver this." Shane opened it. Inside was an invitation cream cardstock, engraved lettering, Hazel's artwork etched in the corner. The words read, "You are cordially invited to the grand opening of the Hazel Vance Creative Arts Center." He stared at it. "You actually did it." "I didn't do it, we did it. You signed the forms. I made the calls. The city approved the permit. The building was sitting unused for years. We're turning it into something that matters." He looked up at her. "How do you keep surprising me?" "I stopped trying to impress the wrong people," she said. "Turns out, I'm much more interesting when I stop pretending." Shane stepped closer. "I still can't believe any of this is real." She reached for his hand. "Then let me prove it." Later that evening, as the sun dipped low behind the rooftops of Queens, Shane stood in the backyard of the modest 2-story townhouse they'd moved into together. Hazel darted between the string lights and the folding chairs, helping her friends tape construction paper signs for the grand opening. Waverly emerged from the kitchen, hair pulled back, apron dusted with flour. "You're baking now?" Shane asked, watching her carry out a tray of lemon tarts. "I'm trying," she said, setting them down. "Hazel says they are edible, which I'm choosing to interpret as high praise." He laughed and pulled her close. "You're not exactly who I thought I'd fall for." "Neither are you," she said, resting her head against his shoulder. "But somehow it makes perfect sense." They stayed like that as the backyard filled with neighbors, teachers, and friends. The gallery lights inside the arts center flickered to life across the street, illuminating the mural Hazel had painted across the front wall. A swirl of colors, stars, and dancing figures unapologetically bold, just like her. Waverly squeezed Shane's hand. "You know, I used to think love was something you had to schedule, like a meeting, something you could only fit in once everything else was done." "And now," he asked. "Now I know it's the thing you start with. Everything else comes after." He kissed her, slow and certain, with the kind of warmth that came from knowing there were no more masks, no more walls to climb. Just her. Just him. Just this life they'd built from the rubble of 2 very different worlds. Hazel ran up to them, face flushed with excitement. "Can we light the sparklers now?" Waverly glanced at Shane, who nodded. "Go ahead, just don't set your hair on fire." "I'm not a baby," she said, sticking her tongue out before darting away again. Waverly watched her go, then turned to Shane. She's going to be unstoppable. She already is, he said. The sparklers lit up the night like tiny fireworks, laughter echoing through the air. Neighbors clapped, someone started playing music from a speaker, and the scent of fresh pastries mingled with the warm summer breeze. Shane wrapped his arm around Waverly's waist. You ready for forever? She looked up at him, eyes bright. I've never been more ready for anything. And in that backyard, surrounded by light and laughter, and the kind of love that didn't care about bank accounts or last names, they danced barefoot in the grass, hazel twirling around them like a comet. They had no stage, no spotlight, no velvet ropes. But it was the grandest night of all, and it was theirs.